Hi, I'm Dr. Tamara Rosier, and you're listening to the Caretakers Journey podcast.
I am your host, Carol Leatham, and I am so excited to dive into this conversation and this topic today. We're going to be talking about ADHD and some practical steps that help us cultivate healthy relationships. My guest today is Dr. Tamara Rosier, and she is the founder of the ADHD Clinic and Center in West Michigan. Dr. Tamara leads a team of coaches, therapists, and speech pathologists who help the individuals and parents and families actually they just need to develop this understanding of ADHD. And I will tell you, after reading her book, I had such a deeper understanding of what ADHD is. And there's so many effective skills that she's going to share with us today that we can help to live effectively with. So her books are Your Brain's Not Broken. And I don't have that one yet, but I've ordered it after I read the second one. And the second one that came out in September, I believe, was You, Me, and Our HDHD Family. This one provides strategies for navigating the powerful emotional aspects. And I was floored when I read the book about some of the emotional things that happen. So Dr. Tamara, welcome to our show today.
I am so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, so let's just dive in at the beginning. What does ADHD stand for?
Well, it's an unfortunate term, actually. It stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder.
Okay.
But guess what? That's not really what it should stand for. And so probably, I mean, it's really misappropriate. It's not appropriately named at all. In fact, sometimes I joke that it's too much attention disease. In other words, it's not really a disease, but we're looking
Yeah.
too, we're aware of too much.
Yeah.
And so, just very quickly, what it is parts of our brains are overstimulated, other
Okay.
parts of our brains are understimulated. And so the parts that are understimulated that are very unfortunate. It's like remembering where I parked my car
Mm.
and other short-term memory issues and executive function issues.
Wow. So, in your book, you share that ADHD doesn't just affect an individual. And this was really interesting to me because I do have a couple of friends who have children that struggle with ADHD. And
Mhm.
it made so much more sense after I read a couple of parts of your book because it affects the entire family. So, my first
Yes.
question that came to my mind was, is this genetic?
Yes. It's so highly inheritable. So, um, it's funny because I have ADHD, but I'm super old. So I'm not super old. I just like saying it to be dramatic. But I'm in my late 50s,
Yeah.
right? And so people are like, "Well, didn't you grow out of it?" Oh no, my friend. ADHD is a gift that just keeps giving. And so I can trace my ADHD in my family back to several generations.
Wow.
I have a grandfather who was a very intelligent man that he got kicked out of school around sixth grade. This is back when they would just say, "Hey, you're done with school, go."
Yeah.
And he worked. He went to work in a copper mine. And again, he was born in 1913. He eventually, and this is a way different time, taught himself how to be an engineer. He was a smart man. He read all the time, but he
Mm.
wasn't. Well, he was left-handed, which was a big deal back then, but he did not fit, and
Mm.
he had ADHD, right? And I'm positive I can trace it back farther than that if I just got into my genealogy and saw the behaviors.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I'm working with families, and at our center we diagnose and assess for ADHD. And a lot of times parents will be listening, like, "Oh, does your child do these things?" And I'll watch one parent kind of nod, like, "Yeah, and she does it too." Like, and parents are kind of calling each other out, like, "This sounds like you, babe." And so, a lot of times it starts the conversation in families. And then once we understand it's inheritable, then we can understand that, um, hey, let's just accept that our family has this neurodivergent bend,
Yeah.
and let's start operating like a family who has ADHD
Mm.
instead of one who doesn't.
I love it. I interviewed a mental health professional last year on the podcast, and we did a four episode series. And one of the things that came out was he was talking about the different brain disorders and
Yeah,
how, and kind of goes along with what you're saying. When we understand that this is just a disorder that
yeah,
can be dealt with through effective
right.
strategies, then
Yeah.
we're no longer trying to sweep. And I remember my brother was ADHD diagnosed when he was a child. And we're all, well, he's in his 50s. I'm now in my 60s. And it's like, I look back when I was reading through your book and I identified so many
Yeah.
things. And even in my husband, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, I don't want to go there yet, but even in my husband who had some ADHD as a child,
Huh?
he's 71 years old now, and I can still see where we're still struggling with some of it. So you
Exactly.
so you shared a statistic about identical twins that was kind of fascinating for me.
Yeah. So in twin studies, identical twins, so twins who share 100% of their DNA,
Right.
are much more likely to have ADHD compared to fraternal twins. And
Okay.
this says that there's a strong genetic component here. And so, um, if you have one parent with ADHD, you are 60% and higher. 60%, I'm just being very conservative with my
Yeah.
numbers,
Yeah.
likely to have ADHD.
Wow.
Now, there are a number of genes involved in
Okay.
this. We
Yeah. I
haven't
wanted.
said, hey, there's one ADHD gene here and turn it off. It's not like that. There's a
Okay.
lot of genes that are expressed, um, but it is highly inheritable.
So genetics obviously play a significant
Yep.
role. Now, what about environmental factors? How does that
So,
play in
yeah,
there?
ADHD is so sensitive to environment. So let's say you have the genetic disposition to have ADHD, right? But if you grow up in this warm, caring home where you're safe, it's structured, your learning structure, you are less likely to have what we would call severe ADHD.
Okay. Okay. So,
ADHD is so sensitive to its environment
wow.
that and I talk about this quite a bit. Like if we want to take ADHD individuals and find the environment that just matches them.
Right.
So in my work, I work with a lot of lawyers, a lot of doctors, a lot of really smart people. And by the way, ADHD is not associated with intelligence. In other
Mhm.
words, you can be dumb with ADHD, you can be very smart with ADHD. It's not.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was being silly
No,
when I
no,
said,
it's
but
and I think it's important because I think sometimes we make that like my husband is an extremely smart man, but he struggles
yeah,
with some mental brain disorders like
yeah,
OCD and some other things. And what
yes,
that does is people tend to look at those diagnoses and make assumptions. So I appreciate you saying that. I
yeah,
appreciate that
yeah.
completely because
Now,
yeah.
yeah. One of my areas of specialty is I work with very smart people who have race car brains,
Oh my gosh.
and so for a doctor with ADHD, and this has been tried and true, their most difficult part is charting, right?
That makes
Like
no
I work,
sense.
right?
Makes sense.
Well, it
Yeah.
it makes complete sense because that's boring,
Yeah.
right? I work with a surgeon who's a great surgeon, but you know what? He does mostly knees. And so he's like, you know, I want to get out. I want to do different stuff. Why? Because the ADHD brain seeks novelty, right? Seeks what's new, what's shiny. And so he's already great at what he does, but his ADHD shows up and going, okay, but what else? I
Oh,
want to challenge myself. And so, he takes these wonderful mission trips. He's doing a lot for the world, kind of fueled by his ADHD need for experience.
something new, something new.
Exactly.
Yeah, and even as we're talking, the things that I read in your book, it's like clarifying so much and yeah. So in chapter 1, and one of the things I love is that your sense of humor comes through in the way you wrote your book, okay?
Thanks.
Because the first thing that happened when I picked up your book was I always look through the chapters and look at the titles, and then I, decide, am I going to do a deep dive read? Am I going to do a quick scan? Well, I did a deep dive read because chapter 1 is called Welcome to the Goat Rodeo. And I was like, okay, I totally have to, with my life, and my listeners know that my caretaking is on steroids right now because of some situations in my personal life that we've been talking about. So chapter 1 of You, Me, and Our ADHD Family is called Welcome to the Goat Rodeo. Now, my
Right.
husband struggled, as I said, with ADHD as a child. And after reading your book, it has helped me understand much of how there's a crossover now with some of his mental illness as an adult. Now, let me be clear. ADHD is not a mental illness. They're totally different. But can you share the difference for my listeners? Because sometimes we have a tendency to just want to throw everything in a salad bowl.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you understand this. So, ADHD is a neurological difference. It means I'm a computer that uses ADHD logic to go through her day. You're a computer that doesn't use ADHD logic. My ADHD logic will go, well, what's the most pressing thing? Well, it's the most interesting thing, Tamara. That's what we're going to do. Whereas you may say, well, what's the most pressing thing? And actually do the most pressing thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I have more of an emotionally run system. My ADHD system often will make priority decisions based on emotions. Or if I'm avoiding something, I could end up cleaning out my sock drawer. So, so that's a different operating system.
Okay.
Now the problem is, ADHD often comes with friends, and these
Oh,
friends create more of a load for us. And the friends, your listeners can't see it, but I should be using air quotes
air
when I
quotes.
say friends because they're frenemies.
Yeah.
So we often see ADHD and OCD together. Now that burden, OCD, and I have many clients who have both. That burden starts to chip away at our mental health,
Makes so much
right?
sense.
Because it's an incredible burden that we're carrying. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if your listeners know this, but many OCD people have it's like these horrible thoughts that keep repeating. Not thoughts like, oh, I'm going to blow something up, but they're thoughts of, I probably didn't do that right, or I should go over this email again, or did I say that right? And they kind of get stuck in this loop, right? Of
Mm-hmm.
repetitive negative thoughts. And so, and then you have an ADHD kind of wild horse brain going, and let's go explore that more. And so a lot of it's the burden that creates the mental health crisis. Now, some other traveling friends are autism and ADHD.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Um, a lot of learning disabilities and ADHD.
Mm.
And so the two that I see the most in my practice are OCD and autism.
Okay.
Um, but again, that chips away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then now let's say you have parents who have ADHD unmanaged, right? So you grew up in a home where you had to walk on eggshells,
Mm.
right? No one took your emotions seriously because they could go off any time, and so you're tiptoeing around.
Yeah.
Well, that that takes a hit at your mental health.
Mm.
And so a lot of ADHD people, and I just feel so compelled to talk to this population
Mm.
because my first book is called Your Brain's Not Broken.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
The second book is like, and now let's get mentally healthy with our families,
I love it.
right? Because we feel broken.
Yeah.
And the truth is, we're we're more susceptible to mental health challenges.
I
Depression,
mm,
anxiety, right?
yes, and I see that so much even as you're talking, I can see that so much in my husband who struggles with anxiety and depression and suicidal ideation because
Oh,
the anxiety and the depression are so much that he just wants out. And
yeah,
yet, I think what I've connected is that the ADHD that he has struggled with his entire life creates these dreams that he has every
yeah,
single night, these
yeah,
negative, scary dreams of things
yeah,
he can't control. And
Right.
then he's not
Right.
getting rest, and then it affects his health. So I can see how ADHD can impact our mental health and how
Yeah.
it can often get confused because you're going to have, like with him, anxiety and just and
Yeah.
depression. And I love that it's primarily just this brain function and development, and how you've even said that they can see it tied to things like bipolar disorder and
Yeah.
schizophrenia, because
Yeah.
it really is, it's kind of like how we manage. And I
Yeah.
love that you're teaching strategies. And so I want to dive in this next section of the show and talk about some strategies that you actually share, which leads me to let's talk about walking us through the processes and the miscommunications of what you call the daily rodeo that families
Yeah.
face. Because when we talk about the goat rodeo, you use that analogy in such a beautiful way to show us that. And I feel like I'm in a goat rodeo right now.
Right.
So let's
Right.
talk about it.
So goat rodeo is something that I say to my clients all the time. I do a lot of parent coaching, and parents will describe something. I'm like, well, welcome to the goat rodeo. And they just kind of laugh. And then I always have to say, I don't really know what a goat rodeo is, but I'm imagining it's chaos. Um, but when I was writing the book, I thought, you know what? A lot of families just kind of go through this daily rodeo, right? Where you have a bucking bronco, you're trying to get dressed and out the door. Just a 7-year-old kiddo who doesn't want to wear sweatpants that day because they're too itchy, right? A lot of ADHD people might have some sensory issues, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then sometimes, like, families are competing for, spaces, and,
Hmm.
ADHD families, remember, it's highly hereditary. So when you have one biological kid, there somewhere in the family, it's there,
Hmm. Yeah.
even if they're hiding it, right?
Yeah.
And so what happens is families feel pressured, and they start taking shortcuts and miscommunicating with
Oh,
each other.
yes.
And so let's just take this family of four. We'll keep it real simple. We have two who don't have ADHD, two who do. And the two who do, let's be honest, they bring the fun. They bring the fun to vacations. They bring the, hey, let's go do this. And the two without ADHD really appreciate and love that about them. But on a day-to-day living process,
Yeah.
so let's say mom doesn't have ADHD, dad does. Mom says, hey, will you take out the trash tonight? Tonight's Thursday. And dad's like, yep, I'm on it. And what happens? Dad forgets.
Hmm.
And the woman without ADHD says, I don't know how you could forget. I literally reminded you at 4 p.m. And he's
Hmm.
like, I'm really sorry. And then she's getting fed up. She's like, I'm tired of your sorries. You can stick your sorries in a sock, because
Hmm.
now we have an extra weeks of trash,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then the husband starts to get defensive and go,
Hmm.
I was busy, and I was still in, and starts to kind of create excuses.
Yeah.
His wife says, I'm tired of excuses. Now, here's what really happened. Okay. Husband loves the wife and says, oh, she wants the trash out. I want to please her. I will agree to this. It doesn't take any step to help him agree, to
Right.
help him remember.
Yep.
ADHD has short term memory problems. And so it just evaporated from his brain. He was well intentioned. He believed he was going to do it. He wasn't lying. And
So
so
good.
right? And so that short-term memory, and by the way, I have ADHD, I have short-term memory issues. I joke about forgetting where I parked my car. That's not a joke. I've traumatized my youngest daughter. And now anytime she's in a large parking structure, she's like immediately takes a picture of where she is. And I know it's because I stressed her out, because I've
Yeah.
lost my car several times.
Yeah.
Now I'm just in a habit, when I park at the airport, I take a photo. But back before we had cameras on our phone,
Yeah.
it was
What
just
did
an
you do?
old-fashioned way. Right. I
You
can tell you what
forgot.
I did. I roamed I roamed a lot through parking structures. And that's kind of embarrassing to admit, but I didn't know I had ADHD, and I didn't know
Hmm.
how to compensate. And so that's one example. So now let's take a kid. So, let's take little girl has ADHD in this family that we've created, and she has meltdowns. Because guess what? Another hallmark is ADHD people have big emotions.
Yes.
Well, dad has big emotions too because he has ADHD. So they're just in an escalating fight, right? Well, if you think this is going to, and they start just whipping each other up,
Yeah.
right? And then mom's on the sideline going, will you guys both just stop?
Yeah. Just stop.
Right? Just stop. And then mom starts to get resentful that
Yeah.
she's feeling like the only grown up in the house,
Mm.
right?
Gosh.
Sometimes I make a joke that she's a designated driver at a frat
Hmm.
party
Yeah.
because it just seems all like a goat rodeo. So
Wow.
this is how miscommunication starts. And, and what I'm asking for in the book is for people to have healthy ways
Mhm.
of talking with each other.
Yeah.
And so if we could go back and talk about the trash. Hey, honey, today's Thursday. Oh, yep, I'm on it. Okay, would you mind if I asked what's your strategy for remembering? Oh,
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure I'll remember.
Um, I'm pretty sure you won't.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, history has taught us. I love you,
Mhm.
but history has taught us.
Yeah.
You know what? You're right. I'm just going to set a timer. Thanks.
Yeah.
See, we just kind of cleaned up that communication.
I
Instead
love
of
that.
making it about character, a lot
Mhm.
of times what happens in families is we turn it into a character flaw.
Oh.
So a lot of us have time blindness, right?
Mhm.
I am so time blind that anytime I'm on time, I just think I just solved a huge problem. I'm like, well, look at me, who's on time?
Oh, yeah.
Um, because I truly am. I don't feel the passing of time
Mhm.
like people without ADHD do. In fact, to be on time today, I set a timer
Yeah.
because I was working on another project. And guess what could happen? I would work on another project for
Mhm.
another hour
I need to wake
and
up.
miss this.
Oh, wait,
Right,
where I was supposed to be
right,
there. Well,
exactly.
I'm glad you set a timer
Right.
because this is amazing. And I wanna kind of dive into something you talked about at the beginning, and
Yeah.
I wanna discuss it a little bit deeper. It's called overfunctioning and underfunctioning. And we've kind of
Yes.
touched a little bit on that with the stories of the rodeo, but I want to go a little bit deeper into that because it's intriguing to me that we have overfunctioners, we have underfunctioners,
Yeah.
and how does this relate to helping the people that have ADHD?
Oh, well, and this relates to everything on your show, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Because as a caretaker, you need to be very careful not to overfunction.
Yes. I'm banging my head on the microphone right now.
Yeah. Thud, thud,
The,
thud.
the,
Yeah. So you want to be very careful. So let's overfunctioning is doing things for people that they can do for themselves.
so good. So
Yeah.
good. Okay.
Yeah.
That is so clear.
Now,
So say that one more time
yep.
because we're catching up.
Overfunctioning is doing things for other people that they're capable of doing for themselves.
Wow. Okay.
Now, wherever there's an overfunctioner, let me be honest, there's an underfunctioner. Why? Because the system relies on this. Okay.
Yes.
So I do a lot of parent coaching in my work, and every time I hear of a child underfunctioning, I'm always asking the parents, where are you overfunctioning?
Mhm.
And let me tell you, I work with some really wonderful parents. They would walk through fire for their children,
Mhm.
but they don't have enough boundaries.
Mm. Wow.
So one of the boundaries I work on is what can you do? Or what can you take away
Mhm.
that your child can do? Now, this is tricky though, when we are dealing with ADHD. And
Yeah.
this is very, very tricky because those of us with ADHD lack executive functions.
Okay.
Okay. Executive functions are those handy things that help you navigate a modern world. Okay. It includes short term memory, It includes working memory. It includes prioritization, organization, creating structure.
Mhm.
So when someone without ADHD looks at my people, we don't look very capable of life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
By the way, I'm blessed with incredibly beautiful daughters, but I have one daughter who does not have ADHD, and I watch her. I watch her. She actually works in my business. I watch her run the business better than I do.
Mhm.
She's just on it. The
Yeah.
staff knows to contact her, not me. I mean, she just does well,
Yeah.
right? And then sometimes I'm like, am I under functioning? In this case, I'm not.
Mm.
I'm still the leader. I still set the vision. I set priorities for the
Mhm.
business. She's doing the executive function work
Yeah.
that, frankly, I am lousy at.
So good.
Um, Working with a calendar, you would think I was trying to split an atom. Okay. I understand that it's easy to other people. I understand I have a PhD and I'm explaining this to you. But you know what? It it is very difficult. It's a lot of executive functioning.
Mm. So good. So good.
So what helps us work together is I hold up my part,
Mhm.
but she does things that I'm not able to do as well.
I love that.
Ideally, that's how that relationship works.
I love
But
that.
if you start doing things for me that I'm capable of,
Mhm.
okay, so now you're over functioning. And and so this is so important, but this is a hard one to get right. And this
Mhm.
is why I just encourage families have discussions
Mhm.
on what they're capable of doing.
Well, and we know when if I'm being dealt with by someone who's over functioning, I know that. And there are ways that I can communicate and hopefully
Exactly.
start a conversation about
Yes.
the over functioning.
Yes.
Well, I want to jump I want to jump into another one of my favorite chapters. And it's called Monkey Malarkey. And it was funny because when I first opened the book to this chapter and started reading through the chapter, I was really intrigued because you talk about the importance of understanding and naming your monkey, which is how you're affected by the ADHD. And so I love why you said that. And I of course love monkeys, so I was very
Oh,
drawn to this anyway. But talk to us about the idea and how it helps us to understand from a person who struggles with ADHD. And I'm
mhm.
sure you could probably also turn the tables and talk to us about how it's helpful for those of us that don't have it to understand the monkey that are. And we're not trying to be disrespectful when we say monkeys because monkeys are beautiful, wonderful, fun-loving creatures,
Exactly. Yes.
and so we're
Yep.
just trying to, and I love how you're creating these word pictures, which help me remember. So when I walk away from things today, from this interview today, you have taught me so much that I'm going to remember because of the connection. So talk to us about monkey malarkey for a minute.
Yeah. So I use this with my clients and in my own life. So in my office, when I'm working with children, I started doing this with children first. And I wanted a way to talk about their ADHD symptoms without making it about them.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, a character judgment. Because parents would go, "Well, just don't do it next time." Well, that's not as helpful.
Right.
Okay. Now remember, even though I started with children, adults use this too. And I'll give you examples how I talk to my monkeys. So what I did is I made a big long list of the monkeys. And the monkeys are kind of the typical ADHD symptoms. So there's like angry Andrew because he gets frustrated just like that. There's
Yeah.
anxious Amy, who ADHD brains kind of are stuck in that fight or flight kind of
Mm-hmm.
place, right? She's always looking for danger. Um, there's uh, avoidant Ava who just it's like, nah, that seems like too much energy. I'm just going to do it. There's critical Kelvin. He pops up sits on my shoulder and whispers to me a lot. Disorganized Derek, helpless Hannah. There's all these perfect
Mm-hmm.
Penny. Um,
Oh.
I had perfect Penny just to try to govern myself. Now, here's what happens because my brain works in a certain way. I developed monkeys who are trying to help me. And these are just monkeys, but I thought they could help me better. So let's go back to third grade. Critical Kelvin pops up on my shoulder and says, Tamara, put your name in the upper right hand corner. I can't even, was it left or right? Anyway, I can't even remember.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking, Calvin yelling at me saying, your teacher is going to keep you in for recess if you forget this again. And so I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And, it was kind of a fear response, right?
Mhm.
Well, that monkey is actually trying to help me, Carol.
Oh.
He's trying to say, I'm trying to keep you out. You want your recess. So I'm going to yell at you first, right?
Mm.
Some other monkeys are like overwhelmed Oscar. Overwhelmed Oscar helps us by just shutting down. It's like, hey, you know what? This is all a bit much, don't you think? And just plops on the ground and goes, and I just picture him just kind of writhing around in a dramatic monkey way. And so all of these monkeys try to help in their little monkey way.
Mm.
And so what started doing with kids is say, well, let's learn to talk to our monkeys.
Mhm.
So let's say you have Perfect Penny who popped up and says, listen, there's only two ways to do this: really, really bad or really, really good. You're going to do it really, really good, really well. So that's how you're going to do that. And so for Perfect Penny's pushing you, pushing you, pushing you,
Mm.
right? A
Mhm.
lot of women have this. And so we learned to pick up the monkey and go, Penny, I get it. You want me to succeed. And I think there are other ways to succeed by not driving myself to be perfect. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead and write this paragraph. It might not be perfect, but it's going to be done. It's going to be good enough. Okay, Penny, that's what we're going to do today.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. Because you're giving, and I'm gonna say us because I can see where this would even be helpful for me who doesn't struggle with necessarily with ADHD, but I still have monkeys and I'm
Right.
identifying while you're talking, I'm identifying those monkeys. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, this makes so much sense. And this is so helpful for us in navigating the emotions, the pressures, and even the caretaking that I'm having to deal with right now, which I want to go into this last section of your book because while we're talking about ADHD and parents and children who and people who struggle, there's so many things that a caretaker could take away from your book. And you share 5 steps that parents or caretakers who have someone with ADHD can use to help our loved ones avoid those emotional errors. And so there's 5 of them and you call them emotional errors and I love that. And then in there so I'm going to just ask you to just kind of go through in these last few minutes of the show these 5 emotional errors and speak to these steps and how they can help us because I'm like still thinking about these monkeys over here.
Yeah. Well, and before we leave the monkeys,
Okay.
I just want to say, your monkeys talk to your husband's monkeys, right? So might have
Oh,
rejection sensitive Rachel that lives in your husband's head, and
yeah.
perfection Penny who lives in yours. And so
Yep.
Penny's just going, "Hey, we just got to get it right, guys."
Mm.
And his rejection sensitivity monkey's like, "Great, I'm a failure." And that is not what Penny's intending. Penny's
Right.
trying to help you.
Right.
So the whole thing with the monkeys is we need to learn to talk to our monkeys with compassion and manage our own monkeys because we're the only ones who can. So,
Mm.
um, I think what happens a lot of times, caretakers are in families,
Mhm.
and you'll see people's monkeys come out during these
Oh,
times, right?
yes. Yes.
So let's say you have a sibling and they have a different kind of like they have a lot of big emotions. Like they might have ADHD, they have a lot of big emotions. So they're getting mad at doctors. And they're like, well, doctors
Mhm.
aren't doing right. Rah, rah, rah. And then, you're like, well, am I going to react to them? Or what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And so this kind of gets us now into the emotional errors.
So
So,
so my brother
yeah.
doesn't listen to the podcast But I can see where the next time my brother starts, he's a barker, and so
Yep.
I don't know what monkey he is, but he's a barker, and I can see where when he starts doing that, the next time
Yeah.
I'm just gonna imagine him as a monkey, and I'm gonna laugh, and if you ever listen to this, I'm sorry, brother, but I didn't say your name. But
Well,
people are like, "Well, she has 2, which one would it be?"
yeah. Well, and
It's
here's
true.
well, he probably has an angry monkey
Mhm.
that's provoked by fear. And so
Oh.
he has two monkeys inside. One is a fearful monkey, whispering, the anxious monkey, whispering to the angry monkey, "Hey, mom's not doing great. We're a little scared right now. She's
Mhm.
our mommy,"
Mhm.
right? Because you don't grow out of mommy, right?
Right. Right.
And so instead of showing that monkey, the big monkey goes, "Got it. You go hide. I'm going to yell at everyone."
Oh my gosh, that makes that just makes so much sense, and
Yeah,
and I have learned naturally how to cope with it without because you don't have to react, because I've
right.
learned that we get to choose how we're gonna respond, and
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
so, and I love taking my grandchildren. I have 4 younger grandchildren, and I love to go to the zoo, and our favorite thing is to go to this one place in the zoo where the Monkey Island is, and we stand there and we just watch these monkeys for
Oh, yeah.
we stood there one time for 45 minutes just watching these monkeys interact with each other. And
I
and
love it.
I love this picture that you've given us. And I really do think that when we begin to understand from practical ways, it's going to help us create
Yeah.
communication in our
Yes.
families that's going to be
Yep.
proactive and
Exactly.
good.
Yeah.
So now let's jump to
Okay.
the 5 steps that you share that help us
Yes.
avoid these emotional errors.
Yes. So just very quickly, and I sorry I went back, but I
No,
just
I'm
wanted to make
glad you
sure we
did.
land the monkey. So emotional errors are times when we believe our emotions
Okay.
and we make error. So emotions are good. They're a healthy part of our life, but sometimes we don't put them in proper perspective. Like we believe them as
Mhm.
truth.
Mhm.
No, they give information, but then we have to process it. And some
Mhm.
people make all kinds of emotional errors around it. We believe them, we don't believe them, we try to be happy all the time. There's all kinds of things. We do a lot of silly things around emotions. So the best thing families can do for each other is to model good emotional management.
Mhm.
Model it. And you know what? If you're not able to, take a deep breath, and if you're still not able to, go into the bathroom, put your hands under cold water until you can do that.
Mhm.
Okay? Because it's really important for you to have a calm nervous system.
Mm.
Once you have a calm nervous system, other people pick it up and they follow your lead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and and teach your loved ones about emotions. So um, teaching doesn't mean have to be didactic. Let's say this unnamed brother, was doing kind of an angry bit. You can just kind of what I do is I call it witnessing, not in the Christian sense, but in the um, yeah, you're scared
Mhm.
and you're angry,
Yeah.
and you're just reflecting that back. You're teaching about emotions in that
Mm.
moment,
So
right?
good. Yeah,
Show
absolutely.
acceptance. So when again, I'm just going to pick on this unnamed brother.
Let's just pick on him.
Yeah, when the unnamed brother is growling and rah rah rah, well, everyone should be doing this, this, and this because I know best. You're just showing acceptance
Yeah.
because he's a scared little boy inside.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and so validate and relate to them the best you can. Um, and finally, try to separate people's feelings from their behaviors and your feelings from your behaviors.
So good.
We make so
So
many
good.
errors around this.
Mm.
So if I lose my cool with you, I'm like, Carol, and I just say some nasty things. Well, then I go back and go, well, I was feeling very upset that day, and
Mhm.
Carol has no idea. And so I feel justified. I'm never justified to yell at you, right?
Right, I
So
agree.
I need to be able to separate my feelings and behaviors And instead I could go, "Hey, Carol, I'm having a really rough day today.
Mhm.
Could you just give me a couple of minutes of patience? I'm going to try to calm myself down
Mhm.
the best I can. I'm sorry if I'm a little clipped today. I'm taking responsibility for my behaviors
Yeah.
because I
So
know that
good.
my feelings are kind of out there."
So good.
So,
So, so good. Oh my gosh. Tamara, this has just been an amazing conversation. I have
oh,
loved
thank
it.
you.
I'm gonna actually go away and chew on it for probably a couple of days. And I get the benefit of going back and listening to it over and over before it ever goes out onto the podcast. But I want to ask one last question, and that is, what are some practical strategies that we can
Yeah.
implement daily to strengthen
Yep.
our relationships and reduce the stress? Because I know right now I'm really working hard to build these relationships with the brother and with the other brother and with the sister, because we're about to lose our mom. And
Yeah.
there's this impending feeling of, we're going to be orphans then. And the
Yeah.
only people that are going to be left are the four of us and then our extended families. But it feels weird because of the family dynamics that we've dealt with. And
Yeah.
so I just, having come back from being there for 2 weeks and trying to find strategies every day how I can strengthen the relationships and yet reduce the stress. Because I
Yep.
can imagine, if you are in with ADHD, now that I understand it so much better than
Yep.
before, I can see where there's so much stress and on the people, on the
Yeah.
families.
That is exactly. So, you'll remember this, and I'm sorry to bring up this big concept and then go, well, bye, guys. But in the book, there is this big concept. And so the biggest strategy I can suggest is putting yourself in transformational thinking instead of
Mhm.
survival. So there's
Yes.
two ways to go about life, and I'm going to try to explain this quickly. There's a whole chapter on this. It was a hard chapter to write because it's kind of complicated. But survival thinking is, I'm losing my mommy. This
Mhm.
feels gross, and I'm scared.
Mhm.
And transformational thinking, you can still have all those feelings, but you're not reactionary.
Yes.
You're balanced in your
Mhm.
approach.
Yes.
And again, I'm not doing it justice, but survival thinking is highly reactionary. It's going to protect yourself. Well, what
Mhm.
do you mean by that? Well, you're not even doing it right.
Mhm.
And you're snipping and you're attacking, right?
Mhm.
And transformational is the way to kind of calm your body, calm your mind. And you know what? My brother's yelling at me has nothing to do with me.
Right.
Now,
Right.
that is a cool Jedi mind trick, but you have got to prepare for that every day.
Yeah. And it's
Every
taken
day you have to renew your mind.
absolutely.
Every day.
And that is that I was just going to say that in the book you talk about how we have to constantly be renewing our mind, which means we have to be taking care of our own
Yeah.
our own selves, let's just put it
Yep.
that way, before we have to be prepared to walk. It's like preparing to walk into a battle, but
Yeah.
you're not like, I'm not anticipating the battle the next time I see him. In fact, I'll probably have forgotten about it by the time we get there.
Right.
But I have to do the things today and tomorrow in preparation
Right. Yep.
for what's coming up. So,
And so it means I don't take things personally.
yeah.
I don't make things about me that aren't
Mhm.
about me. And in transformational thinking, I know that other people's behavior is about them.
So good.
And so I am not quick to react.
So good. So, so good. So, as we close out this really special, meaningful conversation today, what is the one thing you want to leave with our listeners? Like, what is the last thing you want them to hear you say?
Yeah. So if you've been listening and you're like, huh, I might have ADHD, please learn about it
Yeah.
because it is better to know. And then if you're like, huh, if I have ADHD, I'm related to other people. They might have ADHD. Please take time to learn about that. It can improve your relationships, it can improve your life. And
Mm.
those of us with ADHD out there, I know I have a PhD, I know I've published books, but if you just knew what a loser I feel like on a daily basis when I
Mm,
can't find my slippers for the 10th time
mhm.
that day because I'm working from home.
Yeah.
Just it just erodes at our sense of confidence.
Mm,
So I just want to encourage people, it is better to know if you have ADHD. You don't have to get formally diagnosed if you don't want, but start to learn about it so you can give grace to yourself and
mm.
others.
I love that. Thank you so much. So, Tamara, Dr. Tamara, how can the listeners connect with you?
Well, through my website is www.miadhd.com. That's M as in Michael,
Okay.
ADHD.com. Uh, both of so my first book, Your Brain's Not Broken, has been translated into 4 languages,
Wow.
and it's in Russian, Korean, Polish, and Spanish.
Wow. Wow.
So if any of your listeners overseas are interested in it, and that book is really like, how do we get into ADHD? What is
Mhm.
it after all? Um,
Wow. Wow. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Dr. Tamara. I encourage you as listeners to grab these books. I have already ordered the first one that I didn't get, Your Brain's Not Broken, and I have already dog-eared some pages in You, Me, and Our ADHD Family. And I'm
Thank
just
you.
so excited because it has provided some strategies just for me and going through the preparation for our conversation today, just helping me understand and learn. And so I just want to thank you, Dr. Tamara, for joining us and for the work that you're doing and the lives that you're changing in a positive way. So thank you.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you. You are an absolute delight. I know that you are in your own goat rodeo right now, and yet you still just show up so delightful. So
oh,
thank you.
thank you. Well, listeners, I just want to thank you for joining us today. And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, please do so. The podcast listeners are growing so fast and so quick. And it just helps if you're subscribing, it helps other people find me and it helps them find our conversations. And I also know that there's other caretakers that you know because statistics say if you're not a caretaker, you know at least one. So if you know a caretaker, share the podcast with them. And one of the things that we struggle with as caretakers is this feeling of being alone. And the Caretakers Journey podcast in our community was designed so that we can connect and find support. And I am always looking for those guests who will inspire, encourage, and equip us for our journey as caretakers. And I found one today in Dr. Tamara. I just hope you found encouragement from today's conversation. And I will be back next week for another meaningful conversation about what the caretaker's journey looks like. And until then, it's all about him.